So welcome so much to our webinar. Just to get us started, I wanted to name that right in front of you, what you see are some different core beliefs about teaching reading and writing to English learners. And these different beliefs come from reading and writing with English learners. So let's jump right into our webinar. Our webinar today is all around student choice strategies to engage English learners. Your hosts today are, we got this, myself. My name is Charis, and I work at Listenwise. Prior to joining the team, I was an elementary school teacher and school leader out in Colorado, and I have someone I had the opportunity to work with when I was in Adams 12 school district out in Colorado. So I'll turn it over to Kari for her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kari Delaney, and like Kara said, we worked together in Adams 12 back when I was a special ed teacher, focusing on our dual identified students and 2E students, twice exceptional students. Now, I am a gifted and talented advocate and digital literacy partner at a school called Riverdale Elementary, working with students grades K through 5 on all of these strategies.
Awesome. Thanks, Kari. And just some housekeeping notes. Throughout our time together in this community of learners, if you have any questions, comments, please engage in the chat. We want this to feel interactive. It's so nice to meet you all, and thank you so much for coming. So just to get an icebreaker started, I'm going to say the directions first, so hold off on typing anything into the chat. We would love to know, what is your favorite? And you can pick one of these three things. What is your favorite concert you've ever attended, park you've ever been to, or your favorite season? So think about which one of these three things you want to respond to. And then for your response, you can choose to either type in the chat box, you can choose to find an image from the web, you can choose to grab a piece of paper right next to you and draw a picture of whatever might be your favorite. So go ahead, I'm going to give you 30 seconds of think time, and then we're going to put our responses into the chat. All right, so I'll give everyone some think time. All right, great. On the count of 3, if you want to write what your favorite concert was, go ahead. 1, 2, 3. Populate that in the chat. Awesome. Love these. Very cool. All right, now go ahead if you pick park and populate what your favorite park is in the chat. Go. And now you can go ahead and put in your favorite season. Beautiful. Love seeing the variety of responses. Love seeing just the community of learners that we have together today for this webinar. So I hope that from that icebreaker, you saw some different strategies in place. The first is just providing the opportunity for all participants here to have choice in how they respond and want to show up to share a little bit about themselves. This is, as we know as educators, really great best practices. And at the end of the webinar and in future email communication, you're going to get a one-pager of different resources where there's strategies all around engaging in student choice. And that icebreaker that just happened comes from Colorín Colorado, from a blog post there. And also I tried to incorporate different aspects of universal design for learning by giving you all the opportunity to either type in the chat or find a picture online or potentially draw a picture and show it up to your fellow participants. So just some general ideas for how to incorporate choice with your students. So there might be varying levels. We're all here to talk about student choice and what that looks like for our English learners, and to talk about 3 choice strategies together with Listenwise. So who are we? What is Listenwise? Some of you might be very familiar with us. Some of you might have just found out about us from an outside source and are joining us today for this webinar. So thanks so much for joining. Here at Listenwise, for many years, we have been serving multilingual learners with lessons in current events, science, English, and social studies through using authentic and rich podcasts to drive instruction. So we have lessons where they're anchored in authentic podcast content to really assess listening comprehension for our learners. And we've been doing that for our multilingual learners in these different content areas. And what we have heard from our teachers is that the lessons have been very impactful for a multitude of their English learners, and they're looking for more lessons that target their newcomers, their more beginner level proficiency students. So we developed, and a drum roll please, we developed our new, yes, it worked, ELD lesson library to really target the needs of our newcomers and our beginner intermediate level English language learners, because we just firmly believe in access. So today we're going to talk about what our student choice strategies look like within our ELD lessons and what they can look like broadly in the classroom. So I'll kick it over to Kari to share which student choice strategies we're going to be talking about today.
Again, thank you all for coming. Our 3 student choice strategies we are going to talk about today, we selected based on not only the things that Listenwise offers, but things that are evident and we can easily put into action in a classroom setting, because that's where most of us came from and that's where we're trying to use these things. So our first strategy we're going to use is selecting mirror, window, and sliding glass door content, which kind of just gives you this idea of how you can really involve the students in what they're seeing and that choice in these many different ways. Engaging multiple listens is again kind of a lift on the learner in a lot of ways, which again is something we want is create that agency within our students, and it's ways for them to engage and find ways to either refresh or revisit or listen for multiple meanings and keep pulling information out of things more than once. It's something that we all do as adults, whether it's listening to something, reading something, going back. And it's something that, again, we want to kind of increase in our students and have them have those opportunities to listen and engage in multiple different ways. The last that we're going to talk about today is incorporating that home language piece, which is a really important piece, not only of our students in the classroom, but of them as a profile as just their learner and part of their identity, and honoring that cultural identity that comes with students and what that looks like, sounds like, feels like in that classroom setting.
Excellent. Thanks, Kari. So let's go ahead and let's look at that first strategy in practice. So here we are, selecting mirror, window, and sliding glass door content. We're going to watch a short clip from Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, and in this clip, she's going to explain what this strategy looks like and sounds like in the classroom. As you watch this video, your thinking job is to think about, what does this look like right now within your classroom? You might already be doing this, so just think about what you're currently doing. And then when the video is done, I'm going to give everyone a second to write about that in the chat. Okay, so let's go ahead and play the video.
We need diverse books because we need books in which children can find themselves, see reflections of themselves. I wrote a piece, maybe in 1990 it was published, which I called Mirrors, Windows, and Sliding Glass Doors. And I think that's really why children need to see themselves reflected, but books can also be windows, and so you can look through and see other worlds and see how they match up or don't match up to your own. But the sliding glass door allows you to enter that world as well. And so that's the reason that the diversity needs to go both ways. I mean, it's not just children who have been underrepresented and marginalized who need these books. It's also the children who always find their mirrors in the books and therefore get an exaggerated sense of their own self-worth and a false sense of what the world is like, because it's becoming more and more colorful and diverse as time goes on. So I think that's why.
Great. So let's pause and reflect. I'm just going to provide some language.
We need
goodness.
diverse books.
Here we go. Pop, up, up. There we are. So in listening to that clip, thinking about how content can be presented that's mirror content that reflects your own personal identity and window content that shows human experiences different from your own. So would be curious to know right now, if I were to walk into your classroom, how might you already be providing choice for your students and how they're engaging in mirror and window and sliding glass door content? You can go ahead and write an answer within the chat. Welcome, Emily. Thanks so much for joining. I just saw your message. Welcome, Lauren. Great. Well, I'll keep giving you all more think time. We're going to hear from Kari with what this looks like in her classroom. So I'm going to turn it over to Kari. And if you have your ideas for what mirror and window content and how it shows up in your classroom, we'd love to hear it. So here we go. Perfect.
So one of the things that I do, because I'm not in a classroom, and even when I was teaching, where I taught for 10 years, I was a special ed pull-out teacher. And so what this looks like for me was a little bit different. And so what I really tried to focus on is how we can make this accessible to all learners, not just in that classroom setting, because everybody looks different, everybody's buy-in is different. And so this is actually right now in my library, one of my displays that I have up for students to see as they come through the library, depending on when they come and what they do. And our theme kind of for this month is, getting to know you. It's our name, strength, and need. That's something that we really focus on. And so this is a display that has different cultures, different kids, different people represented in a variety of different ways doing different things. And so really, like, what we started with was this display, and we do book talks. And so what this looks like is in the mornings, we have our morning announcements that we do as a meeting like this, they're live. And I might get on and choose a book either that mirrors me, and I will give a book talk on that and tell students, you can find this in the fire truck. Or I might choose a student or a book that's a window for me. And I might say, hey, this is not me, but I'm looking into this, I'm peering in, and I'm learning about this new thing, and how cool is it? You can find it on the fire truck. The other thing that I've done is had students do that same thing. So I have students come down to the library. I help them look for a book that is either a mirror or a window. They read the book, and then they come back and they get to be featured on those morning announcements. So it's not just me as the adult continuing to facilitate and kind of be that sage on the stage. the students are having that opportunity to share with each other, which then fosters those opportunities for everybody in their own space. The other thing we really have focused on just in my building is Read Across America. It's something that everybody can do. It's accessible. And there's a lot of really great titles out there that you can find to kind of flush out either a classroom library, your school library, things like that. And even though Read Across America, a lot of people think it's like a week kind of thing, but it's like really a year-round kind of thing that's accessible. And like I said, there's lots of titles, and a lot of the titles I have in my display came from that piece. And so it's a really nice resource for teachers to use, and then something that's being used across America, across the nation, so that there's opportunities for like us here engaging in this space, that we can find some of those common points of grounds that hit home for lots of learners.
Excellent. Thanks, Kari. Great to see. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing how you're utilizing mirror and window content within your setting. Just to show a little bit about what this can look like for students with Listenwise. So we have very robust different collections that students can engage in. And within these collections, there's different lessons where students are hearing the voices of individuals, be it in this collection of stories of people with disabilities. There's a great story in there about a student with ADHD that students can learn from with one another. Students have choice to figure out, which collection do I want to engage in? Which populations of people do I want to learn about? Right now, I really want to promote our Hispanic American stories. We have Hispanic Heritage Month is happening right now, started September 15th, going to October 15th. So just a plug that on our platform, we have this excellent story that you can use with your students titled The Many Meanings of Hispanic. And then we have a great blog that you can access around tips for providing windows, mirrors, and doors with our podcast, because it's so powerful for students to have choice in picking which podcasts do they want to engage with to learn more about themselves, about other students in their classroom, about students just across the world. And within that, we have a calendar resource where we're celebrating different holidays with Listenwise, and we have plugs for different podcasts. So in that resource page that I mentioned, there's going to be links for these two resources. So you're ready to go with Listenwise based content to address, providing mirror, window, and door stories for your learners. So it's a great way to provide choice. Students see themselves in our stories. They learn about one another. They learn about, a variety of perspectives. They gain empathy. So just one plug for that student choice opportunity. And then I'll kick it over to Kari for the next one. Boo. Here we are. Oh, there we go. We got it.
So this strategy came from this book that we have featured here, and I'll just read really quickly. It's when asked what could be done to alleviate listening comprehension anxiety, students suggested making input more comprehensible, increasing time for listening, and combining listening with other skills. And so really what that sounds like is giving them opportunities to engage in that kind of oral narrative, if you will, because I don't think we give enough time and importance to that oral piece, that storytelling, that opportunity just to strengthen that skill. And when we're fostering that with kids, we also have to give them the opportunity to hear those other pieces and hear it in multiple ways. And so, Charis, if you want to click to the next slide, I'll talk about what that looks like in action. So, again, like I said, my background is special education, and now in this different learning space where I'm really trying to help other educators and just other teachers kind of see what this looks like in their space. There's a few different ways that you can do this. You can encourage those multiple listens, and parts of it where kids have their own kind of control over that. Some of these things are absolutely free to use, that you might need to just have a subscription for. A lot of your school districts may have already purchased. And it has opportunities for a human read aloud, which something like I might do. I use Screencastify a lot in the past, which in this, that remote learning space was kind of a big thing where you record yourself, you put it out there, whichever your learning platform is, and then your kids can go back and re-access that. And it's something that kids, grades K through 5, even pre-K through 5 can access. An audio read aloud, again, like we're all really good at finding things on YouTube. We watched a video just today that was, had that auditory component that we could go back to and listen to again and find more information from there. The other piece that I really like is the student record read aloud. So in say Seesaw or Flipgrid or even Screencastify, and in RazKids is the other one, there are opportunities for the students to record themselves reading that then you as the educator can either listen to them and hear, but then the student themselves can go back and hear themselves reading. There's also opportunities in these places for kids to hear other kids reading. So again, it's creating that sense of community and that sense of belonging, that it might sound differently in other languages. It might sound differently, just the way we speak and the way we talk. And even though there's a flow and a cadence and a rhythm to reading, I might read something with a different intonation than Charis does. And so to have the students have that opportunity to hear those same words, either coming from multiple adults or coming from other students, really gives them that sense of choice in how they're listening to whatever the content is, and then what they're listening to. Again, like the world is so auditory with, TV and movies and streaming and YouTube, to kind of frame it in this sense that they have control over the way they can access some of this learning and go back and access it again, is a really important skill for our kiddos to have. And then, like I said, just building that practice of, I can get something more out of this if I have the opportunity to go back.
Awesome. Thanks, Kari. So I want to pause and say that as we think about the power of multiple listens, I want to bring in the voice of a Colorado educator who utilizes Listenwise. And this is a quote from her. One of my favorite things about Listenwise is that it gives students autonomy. Students are often shy or too embarrassed to ask a teacher to repeat something after 2 or 3 times. Now they can listen to a podcast or video as many times as they need. Here at Listenwise, we're all about giving students autonomy and choice. And, the power of multiple listens really can help to alleviate anxiety for our students. And within the collection of our new ELD lesson library, we're really targeting that vision of empowering students to have choice and empowering students to choose if they want to have multiple listens. And what's exciting is now within an ELD lesson, so here's one of our examples, gravity, dropping a feather in space, students have the opportunity to engage in multiple listens, not only with a podcast, but also with new videos. So if you're familiar with Listenwise, we didn't have videos before in our current existing collections. We had a ton of scaffolds to still support our multilingual learners, but now we've added videos to really help build background knowledge and help students build their academic vocabulary as they're listening to these videos, watching them. So then when they get to the podcast and they're hearing that academic language of gravity and the forces of nature, it is something that they can picture happening because they've seen the videos in action. So students, again, have a choice how many times they want to watch the video, how many times they want to listen to the podcast. They also have a choice to slow down our audio up to 20%. What I love about that is at 20%, you don't lose the authenticity of the speaker. So it's not like the person is talking far too slowly where you're losing, that human connection. They sound a little robotic. It still keeps with that, but the student has the choice if it would benefit them to slow down the audio. And within that lesson, within this gravity lesson, then students also have the choice if they want to engage in filling out a graphic organizer while the podcast is playing. So this can help them, I think back to that language from the book, that Kari was just sharing, having this can help them alleviate some of those feelings of anxiety as they're listening, because they are like, oh, okay, I'm looking for this word. I know what I need to put here as I'm listening to the speaker talking. So this is a choice that students have whether or not they want to engage with the graphic organizer. Our lessons have, at least 2-3 graphic organizers that a student could engage with. And then as a teacher, we've broken down the teacher's lesson plan to include ideas for a first, second, and third listen. And within all of those multiple listens, there's different differentiation opportunities that are being built in. We don't need to look at this text in detail, but I want to call out that while we're working on listening, of course, there's language within these first, second, and third listening opportunities that's highlighting students working on their writing, on their speaking, and on their reading. So while Listenwise is using audio and video to propel students forward, we're still working on the other components of literacy within our lessons. So that's just a little bit about what it looks like to include choice and multiple listens with Listenwise. The next piece is around incorporating home language. We just firmly believe at Listenwise in the incredible assets that our multilingual learners bring. And, this quote resonates that when we allow students to use their home language, they feel less stressed because they can use words and patterns they know to understand the instructions, find resources in their home language, and collaborate together. Such an incredible asset for our students to be bilingual, trilingual, and we really want to honor that when they walk into the classroom and give them choice and opportunity to use their home language. So I'm going to kick it over to Kari to share what that looks like within her setting.
So when Charis and I were first planning this webinar, and we talked about how we were going to have that page of the book for you as you first came in and talk about like what resonates you, what's missing. And one of the things that I said I felt was missing was really honoring that's the students in their home life and the things that they are bringing forward that's so rich and meaningful to them. And part of that, I feel like, is this home language piece, this idea of them being able to access things in their home language to feel that success and kind of reduce that anxiety. These are 3 different things that I have used in the past, and they have various like subscription kind of things. And I kind of put that in there, but there are absolutely things you can look into a little bit deeper. But all of them have the opportunity for that translation piece so that students can choose to access that in their home language, or parents can choose to access that in their home language to better help and support their students. One of the things that I really loved about Bookshare is that it's really targeting kind of that special population within a special population, where it's looking at students who have some kind of print disability or something else there that might help increase some of that learning and some of that being excited about reading, is to be able to access it in their home language and something that can be read to them as they're reading on that screen. The other thing I really liked about it is that it has popular and mainstream titles. Like when I think back to how my mirror and window in action, I had books at the top of the fire truck that were popular books in Spanish were the ones I had. And I had Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Olivia, and there was like a Harry Potter or something, I think, up there, because those are the books we have. And on Bookshare, there are 34 languages in those popular and mainstream titles, so that the students are accessing things that, all of the other kids are accessing just in their home language. Class Dojo is something that I use with parents and students. There's both components there, and it translates into 36 different languages, and it's free. What I really like is the teacher can use their function to assign a project or something to a student that they can then translate into the language that is accessible to them. So the teacher can give the instructions, they can go in, they can translate it, and then they can kind of even go back to that multiple listens or multiple reads selection and strategy to really understand what's going on there, to be able to give a product that they're proud of. Google Read and Write is subscription based. It does have translation, including print things for print opportunities there. It includes print words as well as pictures. So it not only will translate a word into another language, it will also give like they're kind of like clip art pictures, so they don't always match 100%, but it's nice to have those multiple opportunities where you see the word in English, you can choose the word in your home language, and then see a picture that goes with that to kind of make those connections for our learners. There are also auditory auditory options where it highlights and it reads it to you. So again, they can choose to either read it or hear it. And then it really is another tool that I used quite a bit with dual identified students and just students that were kind of struggling in that sense, because I, as a teacher, can have a free account, any educator can, and you can use that to build a graphic organizer or something like that, kind of a scaffold for those students who need it. So it's not just something that the students have to have. You as an educator can use it as a resource to create for your students so that they have that opportunity to access it in their home language.
Excellent. Thanks, Kari. Great. So what does it look like in action here at Listenwise to honor home languages, and how does that show up? So within our new ELD lesson library, we have built in different Spanish translation features. And we're really excited about this because we really do believe that home language abilities and experiences always should be viewed as a benefit rather than a deficit for our students. So it's big for us that we have built this library to include Spanish language features within it. We are working to expand to other languages. They're coming soon, so be excited for that. So one piece within that is we now have a transcript that goes with the story that's in Spanish. If you're familiar with Listenwise, we've always had transcripts that are interactive. So that looks like the words lighting up as the story goes, just like karaoke, but podcast version for our lessons. And now what we have is we have that transcript in Spanish for our students to access. We also have within the assignment, you could hover over a word and then you can see the picture dictionary, and you can also see the Spanish translation. So again, another way in which we are seeking to honor home language to build that into our lessons. And students also have the choice, and you can decide what this looks like for your learners, to take our quizzes now within the ELD lesson library have a Spanish language feature. So again, just really excited about these new opportunities for students to have choice in what language they're engaging with the content in, to support their language acquisition in English and their home language. It's something that really matters for us. So with that, we have now gone through our 3 different student choice strategies of selecting window, mirror, and sliding door content, of multiple listens, and then of incorporating home language within your classroom. So I'll kick it over to Kari to lead this next part.
So now we're going to kind of give some think time here to kind of say what strategy are you excited to implement, and thinking about like what that might look like in your classroom. It could look like some of the things that I've shared, some of the ways Charis has shared with Listenwise. And we want you to just take a minute and think about like, what are you excited to implement? How might you make it your own? And go ahead and pop that in the chat, because like I said, we're a community of learners, and there are definitely pieces here that I, had this idea, and somebody might pop something in, and I might change kind of what I did to look like to make it match something that better fits my learners that I didn't even know I needed or I was missing until somebody named it for me. So go ahead and take a minute to kind of think about that, and then pop in the chat what you're most excited to do and how you might do that, or even how you're already doing it. Because again, we picked these 3 strategies, but we know they're best practice for students. Like they're things that you are probably already doing in your setting. You just needed a name, maybe to name it, and to recognize that all of the work you're doing is actually just best practice. And as you're going through and thinking about the strategy you're excited to implement, go ahead and also start thinking about, we're coming into kind of that Q&A section as well. So if you're not quite here with a strategy you're ready to implement, it's okay to just have questions or have wonderings that you would like to put out there, and we'll get to those as well.
Okay, so my name is Ava and I'm on the Listenwise team. I'm going to be helping out, reading out some of the questions that we're getting. Again, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat or you can also put them in the Q&A and I will read them aloud as I get them. Hopefully we'll get to as many as possible. But I did see a question right away about the how do you access the ELD lesson library and what are some ways that people can access it today?
Yeah, great. I can take that one. And that segues really well. There is a link right here. We can actually also put it in the chat too. But so how you're going to access the ELD lesson library, it is within our Listenwise premium account. And you can sign up today for a school trial so you can explore what the ELD lesson library looks like within premium. Happy to connect with you and set up a time, be it if your school or your school district wants to, explore Listenwise, the ELD lesson library further. I would love to, set up a meeting and have more of a conversation with you if you're looking for long-term implementation.